Well, let's go to the second slide of the results. And this is the one I know Boomer would love to get into here. And it's the alcohol. Come on, the booze, right? We need to get that going here at Memorial Stadium. And I say that a little bit with tongue in cheek, because I know that we have some Redcasters that are, I'm sure you hear this, they're vehemently opposed to it, and some that are absolutely for it. But according to the results, 72% had a positive or neutral attitude towards alcohol. 83% had a positive or neutral attitude towards alcohol-free sections. That's an area I'd like to talk about in a little bit. 80% had said there'd be no impact if there was an elimination of the stadium reentry policy. And I think the last statement here, alcohol sales would have an overall net positive impact on attendance at Nebraska home football games. So I guess, as you get that information back there, what should Husker fans start to expect? Not just at Memorial Stadium, but a couple of weeks ago we had the Big Ten wrestling tournament at PBA where there was alcohol sold. That was a Big Ten event. But now what are your learnings from that? The Garth Brooks concert, all that kind of cumulatively added together. What are some of the takeaways that we can start to expect?
Yeah, I think expect us to be thoughtful and strategic with how we proceed. The results are encouraging for those who want alcohol sales, but it's not as easy as flipping a switch really at Memorial Stadium to introduce alcohol into the stadium. There are some infrastructure things that do need to be addressed when it comes to Memorial Stadium. Now, I would be, you mentioned the Big Ten wrestling tournament. Obviously, Pinnacle Bank Arena is equipped to have alcohol sales. They do it at concerts and other special events. So it's easier for us to introduce it there than it would be at Memorial Stadium, just from a pure infrastructure perspective. We learned a lot from the Garth Brooks concert from that infrastructure. We don't have a lot of coolers space if we were doing canned beer or canned alcohol. So we have to bring in refrigeration trucks to keep alcohol cold or drinks cold. So those are some things that as we look to doing it at Memorial Stadium, we want to make sure we do it right. And I know that's a big emphasis for Trev as he's making these types of decisions, if we're going to do it, let's make sure we're doing it in the right way. And it's the best business decision for the Huskers and for the athletics department, while also providing our fans with a positive experience, because we don't want somebody to have a negative experience when it comes to alcohol sales. Which is why we even asked that question about alcohol-free sections. Listen, I say ideas are easy. Execution is everything. It's an easy idea to have alcohol-free sections. Without having alcohol sales in Memorial Stadium, we certainly already feel the impacts of intoxication. So it's hard to be able to police that. But there are other areas or other schools around the country that have what are called family fun zones or family sections, where you're really targeting more of a family to attend the game or sit in similar sections. So it's possible that some of those types of things could be introduced. But we haven't, like I said earlier, we haven't taken any of this information and set out a plan yet. We really wanted to gather the information, analyze it, and then put together a game plan for how we proceed.
Well, I know some of the feedback we got on one of the social media platforms a month or so back when we wrote something positive about alcohol. And I've seen this from other people is, well, we don't want Colorado from the 90s. And let me be very clear here. I don't want Colorado from the 90s. Nobody wants Colorado ever. Sorry, Rob. But
no offense taken.
But back in the day, that was one of the only schools doing it. But I think it is important for people that maybe have those memories of 20 years ago is to understand in today's climate, how many schools in the Big Ten already have it.
Right.
Ohio State, I know we went to that game. Boomer, you've been up to Minnesota.
Yeah, Minnesota has it. And, I mean, they sell grain belt beer there, which barely qualifies as food, but it's, I guess technically it's beer. Yeah.
Illinois has it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Illinois.
I think Purdue does too, don't they? If I remember right.
Purdue,
So,
Purdue did. So I mean, you know the number off the top of your head, Tyler? Or?
I actually do not know the number of Big Ten institutions or even schools around the country, but the trend is going towards it.
It's not uncommon.
It's really not uncommon at all. I think that a lot of schools have introduced it. And I think even the early pilots of the program, West Virginia was one of these that did it. They did a study on alcohol-related incidents in their stadium. They actually saw a decrease in alcohol-related incidents. And I think the byproduct of that is just people aren't binge drinking as much out in the parking lots before they go into the stadium. We are a little bit of a unique beast. And even on their on the survey, we asked a question about reentry. most places, when you start introducing alcohol, will not allow reentry, and that's really a liability issue as well. If you start selling alcohol, depending on state laws, there's some liability that could be associated with over serving someone. So there's a lot to consider when it comes to that. But West Virginia saw a significant decrease. A lot of other schools saw a decrease in alcohol-related incidents. Prior institution, Tulane. Now, granted, the caveat to this is that you're in New Orleans, which is a drinking culture. There were very few alcohol-related incidents. And in one of our club areas, it was all-inclusive wine, beer, soft drinks, and food. Ooh. So all with your ticket, you got all free drinks, all food, etc. And I will tell you, in my 5 years at Tulane, I don't think there was one alcohol-related incident that occurred in the club, which is pretty astounding to think about when you're talking about an open bar.
So I'm looking here and I found something that actually says like which schools in the Big Ten specifically sell alcohol. And through 2021, there was Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Maryland, Ohio State, Purdue, Rutgers, and Minnesota. Those are the schools so 8 schools that sell alcohol. I don't know if Iowa did it this year or not, because it was a pilot program for them. So we'll see if they continue to do it. I would assume that they probably are. I haven't heard anything.
Those are the schools that offered for general sales. I think Penn State, Wisconsin, Sparty, and Hydrox NU have it as part of their private suites and premium seating. So Nebraska and Michigan are the only ones that basically a dry stadium.
Hydrox NU is Northwestern, Tyler. Sorry, we call them Hydrox NU. So they're like the other Oreo.
Yeah, I mean, sure, they were the Oreo first, but nobody cares. So well, we all know who the real NU is. So
I read the West Virginia study, and the binge drinking went down, but the couch burning went up, strangely enough. So I'm not sure how that correlates.
Yeah, I don't know either. They'd have to probably do some more longitudinal studies on that to figure out if there's some correlation.
Hey, Boomer, do we have any comments yet about
yes, so we've got a few here. Let's see, Jason Stinger, one of our loyal listeners, he thought alcohol-free section seemed like a bad idea. Maybe a guy just wants a beer, and people aren't probably going to get drunk on $10 beers anyway, and that's probably fair.
Be surprised, Jason. You should come to an A's. You should come to an A's game with me sometime. You know, like, because you got to think about what they consume in the parking lot, and then by the time they're on their $10 beers.
But that's the thing. You're not drinking $10 beers to get drunk. If you're already showing up that way, which is completely outside of the stadium. You can't control that. What I thought was interesting was when Dave and I went with friend Gary and his girlfriend at the time. We went to the Ohio State game in 2016, and when you lose 62-3, you'll take every beer you can have. But leading up to that, it was a night game, and so we were. we were just having your normal amount of drinks, but what I remember was them kind of saying, hey, you don't have to worry. No one's binging at the end. You're not drinking those last 3 in the last 30 minutes because, you can just get to the game. And it kind of lets you just, I don't know. I just kind of spaced them out a little more and it was a little more responsible. That's on me. You can't police everyone that way. But, I didn't see any issue at all with it or how it was administered, at least at Ohio State. And again, when you're paying $10 or $12 a beer, it's pretty hard you're not showing up sober and getting drunk on that. I'll just put it that way. That's not probably going to happen.
That's a valid.
Yeah. And I think that's, to Jason's point, that's exactly what makes this an easy idea, and it can be difficult to execute. I think that there's obviously education that needs to go into making sure that people understand that if they are buying a ticket, they're buying it into an alcohol-free section. So there's a lot of layers to making sure that if we do it, and this goes back to everything that we're trying to accomplish here, if we're doing it, it needs to be a thoughtful, strategic approach to how we actually execute it. And we need to be prepared for all sides of that conversation. So we see a lot of value in it. And I think that Honky, you could probably even put the slide back up. What was it? It was positive or neutral. Yeah, 83% positive or neutral attitude. So I wouldn't say that the vast majority, unfortunately, Jason, were negative about alcohol-free sections. So it is possible it could happen. But again, we haven't even gotten to that point where we know exactly how we'll execute all of this. So it's an interesting conversation.
Yeah. And I do think one thing that all sides, no matter what you fall on, is that we all want Memorial Stadium to continue to be the experience that it is for opponents, for kids, for families. I mean, that is something that's so uniquely special. I can remember Merrill Hodge coming, I think, at the BYU game in 2015, and we lose on a last second Hail Mary, and he still talked about just how amazing the fans were in a game where, you could expect all the worst from the fans, but that doesn't happen. It doesn't happen in Lincoln, Nebraska. And we want Memorial Stadium to always be special. We just, can we do that in the same way? Can we have the best of both worlds, be able to continue to keep that environment while also allowing adults to be able to have a drink? That's the goal. At least that's the goal of the Redcast.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, one of my all-time favorite questions to ask any Husker fan is, do you remember your first football game? And I think that elicits a lot of really positive memories for folks coming to the stadium as a kid. And we don't want to lose that purity. I mean, I think that's really important, that people still feel comfortable to bring their kids to a football game and don't feel as if the atmosphere is for adults only. So Travis said Memorial Stadium belongs to the people of Nebraska. And that is very true. It belongs to kids all the way up through, our older kids.
Well, my first experience at Memorial Stadium was the CU game. What was that, 4 years ago now? Is that about right? I come from Northern California, moved out to Colorado, finally got an invite to come out to that game with the Redcast guys. I have to say, I mean, I've been to a lot of stadiums around the country, and it was probably one of, if not the best experience that I had as far as just a fan base, was. The people there were super nice. You're driving through the state of Nebraska, and it doesn't matter where you stop to get gas, where you stay the night. My wife and I stopped halfway there and stayed the night somewhere and then drove the rest of the way to Memorial the next morning. I mean, it was red as far as the eye could see. It was like a national holiday. And it's even like that for the spring game. I came out there last year for the spring game. It was the exact same way. It was like a national holiday, red as far as the eye can see. And you don't see that anywhere else outside of, and I know they're going to laugh at me, but you don't see that anywhere else outside of like a Raider game where they used to have the parking lot at Oakland Coliseum was full of silver and black as far as the eye could see. It's like 40 acres of nothing but people tailgating as far as the eye could see. It's silver and black. And that's the only other time I've experienced anything like that in my life. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm part of two best fan bases in sports. Like that's that for me. And the Huskers are way nicer than Raider fans. I will say.
Yeah, I shriek every time you compare Husker fans to Raider Nation. I'm not going to.
I was only comparing it as far as the scene goes, but as far as people go, Husker fans are way nicer. That's true.
Well, random tangent back to the survey. Did you just have any questions who the 2% of people that thought we needed salads as a food enhancement at the games were? What kind of maniac sits at a football game? I could really use a chef salad right now.
That was me. I'm sorry.
Oh, that makes sense.
That was me too. I really could go for a Cobb salad when the light show is going on in the end of the third quarter, start of the fourth quarter. No, I think I don't know. We obviously didn't extrapolate that out, but maybe that was one thing I was a little bit surprised by was concession variety. Most of the responses were to local chains, which I would assume that is, our Valentino's, Runza, Fairbury hot dogs, etc. That there wasn't more of an interest in, brisket sandwiches or, an Omaha Steaks kebab or something, right? Like, I think that was something that we were anticipating coming out of those results. So to see a large portion select the local chains as what they would like to see in the stadium, maybe personally from where I sit was a little bit surprising.